You are listening to the Toxic Mold Podcast with Steve Worsley, the toxic mold expert and your number one source for mold consulting and mitigation in the USA. Let's dive into a brand new episode. Before we get started on this episode, here's a not so short disclaimer. While all attempts have been made to verify the content provided in this podcast, neither the podcaster or the producers assume any responsibility for errors, omissions, or alternative interpretations of the issues discussed here. All information stated in this podcast is the opinion of Steve Worsley. Steve Worsley is a mold specialist with over 25 years of experience in the construction and mold industry. The Toxic Mold Podcast is for information sharing purposes only. The views expressed are those of the podcaster and his alone. These views should not be taken as expert instruction or commands. While there may be references to medical conditions and symptoms, all podcast episodes are the opinion of Steve Worsley, and any medical questions or concerns shall be addressed with the appropriate licensed medical professional or professionals. As the podcaster refers to different mold types, please be aware that Steve Worsley is not a microbiologist, and questions concerning mold specifics should be answered by the appropriate professional. Steve isn't, nor does he offer any legal advice. For any legal advice, you must speak with a lawyer. The listener is 100% responsible for his or her own actions. You can check out Steve's books on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and search for author Steve Worsley. You can also take Steve's courses on Udemy or Skillshare, and you can find out more about those at cnccontractorservices.com. Now, let's get to the episode.
Hello, you're listening to the Toxic Mold Podcast with myself, Steve Worsley, and once again, we get my wife, Cassandra. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
This is the last episode of the year, so it's Christmas, actually.
That's right. Ho, ho, ho. Isn't that what they say?
Yeah. This is actually episode 239, so it's kind of crazy. We do, one a week. We've been doing it. I'll have to look and make sure, but I'm pretty sure April of 2019 is when we started doing this. So it's kind of crazy to think we're, 239 episodes into it. I appreciate all of you listeners. Last time I checked, and this was in November at some point, we were over 70,000 listens. So
that's amazing.
We, at the rate we're going, hopefully by March or April of next year, we'll hit 100,000. So,
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, which is pretty good. As you know, my goal has always been to stay consistent with this podcast, and for the most part, we've done it. So
exactly.
And we couldn't do it without these listeners, so we appreciate all of you. But like I said, today is episode 239, and today's topic is, let's wrap up the year with the most common toxic mold questions. So what's probably the most common question you probably hear, as far as not what I hear, but what you probably see from people that are not mold literate?
I think everybody wants to spray bleach and kill the mold. I see so many things at Walmart that say, hey, it kills all mold and mildew. And so I think everybody's like, can I just, squeeze some bleach on it and it all goes away?
Yeah, that's probably the most common myth that I hear and question. What can I use to spray mold, or what kind of spray can I use to kill mold? They always like to throw that in there. And, we've talked about it before. Mold, for the most part, yeah, you can kill it. You can change the chemical makeup and make it so that it can't become viable and reproduce. But the term killing mold isn't something, like, I'll use it, but I don't like to use that term because, as we talk about all the time, mold is naturally present in the air. So when you say kill something, it'd be like killing all the mosquitoes in your backyard.
Yeah.
It sounds great, but is it feasible?
Exactly. And yeah. And killing mold is sort of an interesting concept. What do you mean when you say kill mold?
Right.
Mold is naturally present in the air.
Right. Well, and that's why it is, I think it's such an interesting topic, because if I remember right, you bought some sort of cleaner for the shower.
I did, yeah, and I wanted to show you because it says it kills mold and mildew.
Right. And it might kill that little section of mold that's there, but you still got to get rid of the mold spores. And how do you get rid of all the mold spores in the air?
Yeah, you don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's a term for our listeners that I want them to understand. Like when someone tries to sell you on, and when I say this, you know, especially on the mitigation side of things, there's a lot of companies that claim that they have this new, I've heard every term in the book, but they can fog and they have this new technology that seeks out mold spores and it kills them. Not saying that that's not out there, but it's something that you would literally have to do 24/7 to kill the mold.
Exactly.
And so when it comes to like mitigation, these companies can come in and say, oh yeah, you know, we can do this for $2,500. And they come in and they fog or spray or do whatever they do and claim that they got rid of the mold. They killed the mold in the house. Well, for the most part, if you have a mold problem, which is mold infestations, you can't just kill it. You have to remove all the mold.
Exactly.
Makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
So, you know, just to kind of cover that with our listeners, that spraying bleach on mold, if it's a non-porous surface, so it's the tile in your shower, that's not a major concern. But if you're spraying wood or your walls or sheetrock, if you're trying to kill the mold that way, you're literally feeding the mold.
Yeah, which is not good.
No, it's interesting. A lot of people try to market things that will say kills mold and mildew. I'm not saying it's not killing it, but you're not alleviating the problem for good.
Exactly.
Another question, this is probably the second most common question I usually get. How do I know if mold is making me sick? And it's something that, once again, we talked about medical stuff a few episodes ago. It's quite complex. Mold is complex. When I get asked that, like, I'm like, well, I don't know. You're going to have to tell me, you know, A, B, C, and D. But what's honestly cool about this question is we have a free course that
on Udemy,
they can go to Udemy and take.
On mold sickness.
Yep, and it's completely free.
Well, and here's the other thing. I think a lot of people are very concerned about the things that make them sick when they get sick. But I would also say it's important to know what it looks like on you to be well.
Yes.
Because you have no baseline if you don't know that. What's going on for you when you're well? What does being healthy look like and feel like for your body? Because it's different from one person to the next.
Exactly.
So you know what those baselines are. So when you do get sick, you know how far to the other side it's gone.
Exactly.
Where you're at right now, and you're documenting the changes from wellness to sickness.
Exactly. Yep. And it, you know, it kind of brings up a point with that question, if mold is making somebody sick, something our listeners need to understand. And I think, you know, if they listen to us consistently, they've heard us talk about it. Mold affects everybody differently. So what might make you sick might not make me sick. Just because 4 out of the 5 people in the home are not sick doesn't mean that that 5th person is a hypochondriac and they're faking it. Like, they could have, you know, some sort of autoimmune disorder. They could have asthma. An allergy to mold is, you know, Dr. Fox explained that, like, and I say this too to my clients, being allergic to mold versus mold sickness or mold toxicity is night and day.
Yeah.
That's like having the snivels versus having COVID.
Exactly.
Which is kind of a good comparison there. Like with COVID, some people it kills or killed. Hopefully COVID's going to be a thing of the past, but it seems to be the gift that keeps on giving. But that's a good example. Like a lot of people, it didn't even affect them. But I guess my point is an allergy to mold is not even close in comparison with being having mold toxicity. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
We already kind of touched on, we weren't going to promote that, but we have a course that's free. So if our listeners are like, well, how do I know if it is mold making me sick? There's a free course. Mm-hmm. It's simple.
And then go on Udemy and take it.
I don't know how long it's been up there. You talked me into doing that several years ago, and I have no intentions. At some point, maybe it will be a paid course, but for right now, and it has been this way since we've put it on there, it's free.
Exactly.
So it's nothing that our listeners have to hurry and go sign up for today. I have no intentions of making it a paid course, but that's an easy way to figure out if mold is making you sick.
Yeah.
So what's another question you usually think of when you think about mold?
How do I get rid of mold in my house? Like, how do I DIY it myself?
For you to do it?
Yeah, I would never do it. But
I was just going to say you don't. If they're a listener, you shouldn't.
Yeah, lots of people go on YouTube and they YouTube mold mitigation and they're like, I think I could do that.
Well, we have a disclaimer. So when we produce these podcast episodes, it tells you you should hire a professional. But if you're really going to tackle something and do it on your own, honestly, reach out to me, and I do consultations for that. Don't try to tackle it on your own. But to answer your question, how do you do it? Well, first you got to fix the defect that led to it. That's something that most people don't really think about. Like, we have to do that CSI investigation to see what's causing it. Fix the defect first. Then you got to put up a containment. You've got to remove the mold. So if it's on sheetrock, you've got to cut it out. You've got to haul it out. You've got to bag it. And this is, I'm not going to go through all the steps and how complex it is, but you have to have a containment where you can take moldy sheetrock, moldy carpet, and haul it out of your home without cross-contaminating the entire home. So you got to get rid of it. You got to run air scrubbers. We use different chemicals for different purposes, different materials. So we don't use the same chemicals in a fogger as we do to spray. Sometimes we're using chemicals just to clean. But anyhow, once you're done with all of that, then we got to do air testing. And if everything looks good, you rehab it and put it all back together.
Yeah, and my answer to how to get rid of mold is hire somebody who knows what they're doing.
But like you said, we might have listeners that are like, hey, I can just go YouTube it. But make sure if you're going to tackle something like that, you're getting the advice of somebody that knows what they're doing.
Absolutely. And again, what is your health worth? I mean, you have to really say, am I willing to expose myself and my family to a DIY project that could make us really, really sick? Is that really a good use of everybody's time and energy?
Yep. And, like I said, I kind of ran through the steps, but there's a lot more to it. I mean, you should have your HVAC ducts clean. There's just a lot of things and reasons why you should have a professional doing it.
100%. And lots of people will say, another question is, okay, now that I know how to get rid of it, can I do it myself? What's your response to that?
No.
Exactly. It's like, can I do my highlights myself? Well, sure you can. Won't come out looking great on your hair.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could pull your own teeth, too.
100%. So. Why? Exactly. But I think the point is, when you need this kind of work, it requires a certain level of expertise. And if you don't have that expertise, and if you want the comfort of knowing it was done well, then that means it probably shouldn't be done by you.
Yeah, and it kind of brings up something, too, that quickly I'll just touch on. It's also important you're hiring the right company.
Yes.
Without going through all the procedures and steps that we take, each company has different steps that they take for mold mitigation, but there is a standard out there. It's the IICRC S520. That's somewhat the common standard for reputable mitigation companies, that they follow those protocols. And if you're hiring a contractor or whoever you're hiring, if they don't even know what those standards are, you probably should hire a company that knows what they are.
Well, and you also want a company that you trust, that they not only have the piece of paper that says they know what they're doing, but they have a proven track record of doing things well. Yeah. So you have to interview people, you have to look up references, you have to check on references. You also have to feel like they know what they're doing. And are they specialists in what they do? I don't know if I want the person who comes and cleans my carpet to be the person who does my mold mitigation.
Exactly. That's a really good point. It's at the end of the day, the best way to vet people is to actually call the company and talk to somebody. Yeah. And if you can't talk to anybody, you probably shouldn't use that company. But a certification, a sticker, a membership to IICRC doesn't make them, trying to think of the proper verbiage to say, it doesn't make them any better than someone like myself. I'm not a member of the IICRC. That's not my certification. I have the certification. It's just not through them.
Correct.
And I guess my point is call the company. Like, I'm a member of a different association, but you could call me and I can explain that to you and say, well, yeah, just so you know, I have their standards, the S520 standards. We meet those standards and we actually go above that. But if you don't call the company and you just go, well, they have this IICRC sticker on their van, that makes them competent, right? It usually, I should say usually, there are companies that can have that sticker, but they don't abide by those standards.
100%. The other piece is, how long does it take them to get back to you once you leave a message for them for the original call?
Yeah.
If you're not even a client and it takes them 4 days to respond to your email or your phone call, you probably want to be concerned. What happens when they're actually doing the mold mitigation on your house and what was supposed to take a month is now on month 3?
Yeah. Well, I would hope you've seen this. I would hope mold mitigation doesn't take a month, but if it does,
well, we've heard some horror stories of people who were told a certain number of weeks, and 3 months later, they're not back in their home.
Exactly. And that, paying for hotels and all that, I'm sure that, and who knows if you have to stay with your in-laws. I know.
Who drive you crazy?
Yeah, if I had to stay with my in-laws for months, I don't know.
Exactly.
And I'm sure you feel the same way.
Exactly.
So I guess my point is make sure you get the right company in there and vet them. Don't just go off of, they got a fancy website or their trucks or vans have this logo on it. They're a member of the Better Business Bureau. Call them and vet them yourself. And like you said, if it takes 4 days for them to get back to you, that's probably a concern.
And it should be.
And it kind of brings up something that has nothing to do with this, but we have the technology these days. I have it on my phone. I have RoboKiller. And so it filters all of my calls. People need to understand that too. Like, sometimes we don't always see that you're trying to get a hold of us.
Correct.
If that makes sense.
But by the time the person gets back to you, if after 5 business days, they're like, yeah, I was so busy.
Yeah.
You're like, you're too busy for me to pay you then.
Exactly. Yep. So that's a good point. And it, kind of brings up what I've said before. Not every client is for me. Mm-hmm. And for our listeners, not every contractor might not be for them. Exactly. So they need to hire the person that they know is going to do the best. So it's kind of crazy. I had a list of questions that I thought we were going to go through, but we only went through a few, but those are some of the questions that we hear all the time. I wanted to wrap up the year with the most common questions. Hopefully, unless you have something you think's real common, we'll just wrap this up. But do you have a last, what you think that is one of the most common questions, or are we good?
I think just remember, you want to begin a new year in a healthy home.
Yep.
If it is Christmas and you realize we have some serious mold concerns, it might be time for you to set up a mold consult or VPA with Steve and really start the new year off on the right foot.
Yeah. Yep. And, obviously you don't see the next week's topic, but next week's topic is we're going to set our indoor air quality goals.
Yes.
So those that have been listening for a while, we usually do that around the 1st. So actually the next episode will be on New Year's Day, but yeah, they want to start off the year with a healthy home, and doing a consultation or a VPA would be a great way to do it. So once again, I hope all of you had a wonderful 2023. Next time it's going to be 2024. So that's kind of crazy,
huh?
Yeah,
time flies.
All right. Well, today was episode 239. Make sure you go to our website and book a VPA or a consultation. Have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure you go to our website at cnccontractorservices.com and sign up for the mold investigation checklist. Again, go to cnccontractorservices.com and get your free mold investigation checklist today. You can also, on cnccontractorservices.com, find out more about Steve's courses and books and consultations. Once again, go to cnccontractorservices.com.